All right, up until now, our infographics have been heavily focused on the graphic side of it. We need to add a little bit more info. So we did add our compass rose here, but we also want to label all of our places. So I'm going to start with, we'll do the Split Rock Lighthouse. And the first step is just actually creating the label. So I'm going to go to Create and Type. I've got in Giant Type, 3D Type. In my attribute editor, in the Type 1 tab, I'm going to name this Split Rock. Let's actually name it Split Rock Label. That'll work. And then I'm going to create my label. So this is going to be Split Rock, and I'm going to make this 2 lines. Split Rock Lighthouse. At this point, I can choose whatever font that I want. I'm going to go with something simple and clean, like Avenir, and we'll set it to regular. Font size that is way larger than it needs to be. I also move it up here. So this is just going to be kind of floating in the air above it. But it does not need to be that large. At the same time, if I go to the Geometry tab here, I do not need an extrusion of 2.5 units. I'm going to bring that way down. I do still want some thickness, but definitely not that much. I also don't need that many extrude divisions. Maybe 2 will be fine. And let's add a slight bevel to this. I'm going to zoom in here. Enable bevel. It's going to look terrible for a second, but we can fix it. We just adjust this bevel distance. I'm going to hold down Control so I've got a little bit more control. I'm going to bring the offset down as well. There we go. And then the bevel divisions can come down to like 3 will be plenty. Okay. And yeah, I think that'll work. I think the last thing that I want to do is I'm going to scroll back up here to the text. I'm just going to center it, and we can, yeah, that works. I'm not going to bring the font size down any further because it's going to affect, I believe it'll affect the bevel settings and all of that. So instead of that, I will just hit scale and bring the whole thing down to my final size, and then I want to position it over the lighthouse. So in the front view, I will position it maybe something like that. And then in the side view also, I will bring it forward. Now, this is the very simple design, right? This is an example to show you the process. Hopefully you will incorporate a little bit more design thinking into this than just very, very plain text. Think of ways that you can maybe embellish or accentuate this than just the text. But for demonstration purposes, this gets the point across. So I've got that added, and I'm happy with that. The next kind of part of this is that we're going to be rendering out turntable animations. And as the camera moves around, when we get to a point where we can't really read that anymore, and we'll see the behind. So we've got, there's a few options. You can kind of randomly rotate all of the different labels and just, let that be what it is. Or you can tell the text to always point at the camera. using what's called a constraint. And that's the way that we're going to do this. So I haven't really talked a ton about cameras. And we'll probably do most of the camera. Well, we'll do that in another video, either this week or next week. But for now, just follow along, and we'll get through this together. So we want to create a camera. So create camera, and we're going to do camera and aim. All right, and then I'm going to move that up above my map. So camera and aim gives you the camera. We all know what a camera is. And this little point that the camera will always point to. So by default, the camera has a constraint applied to it so that it is always looking at this camera 1 aim shape is what its default name is. And as I move that around, you can see the camera pans and tilts to follow it. So we can put that really wherever, but right now we'll just center it roughly over the Split Rock Lighthouse. Okay. And so now I'm going to split my view here into two. All right, just click this 2-pane preset, and then in my left pane I'm going to go to Panels, Perspective, and Camera. So now I'm seeing the camera's point of view. Over here in the perspective, I can see my, the omnipotent perspective viewpoint. And so as this camera moves around, you can see that now I'm seeing the edge of Split Rock Lighthouse, and it becomes no longer a useful perspective. So we need to add the constraint. Okay, so the way this is going to work is, and I should also mention I'm following from the notes on Maya's own documentation because I don't want to confuse you, and there's a couple of order of operations things that need to happen, otherwise this won't work. So I say all that to say the Autodesk help is very thorough, and I encourage you to refer to that for any questions you may have related to this or not. But what we want to do is the first thing we want to select is the target object. So the target is actually going to be the camera. And then hold down Shift and select the text. Right, the text is always going to be aimed at the camera. Right, the target is the camera. Once we have them both selected, you should see the camera selected in white and the text selected in green because that was the last one you selected. You need to go to the animation menu set. Right, up here on the top left, change it. It's probably at modeling right now for you. Change it to animation. And then go to the constrain menu and aim. And we want to select the options here, the option box. And it gives us all of these different options, many of them. And you can kind of play around with this and click apply and undo and get a feel for what all the different things do. Also, there is documentation on what everything does. We don't really need to worry about most of this. What we do want to focus on, though, is the aim vector, which is which direction of the text object do we want to be pointing at our target, right? So we want the front-facing text, right, the readable side of the text, to be pointing at the target, which, if we look at these coordinates, we can see is the positive z direction. So that's what we want to set in this aim vector. And again, this is x, y, z, so we want the x to be 0, and we want the z to be 1. Okay, so that's what's always going to be aiming at the camera. The up vector is telling you you telling Maya which way is going to be up, and that's set to the default. Positive y is up, which is what we want, so we'll leave that alone. World up type is, I think we can just leave that alone. And world up vector we can leave alone. So now it's just constrain axes and weight. So you can actually set constraints to only partially influence objects. We're going to go for the full 100% weight. So we'll leave that at 1. But it's the constrain axes that we want to focus on, and we only want this to spin around the y-axis. Okay, we don't want it to tilt if the camera moves up and down. We want it to stay standing upright, but spin with it. So if I don't adjust this constraint axes section and just click apply, you can see it actually tilted immediately. And now if I select this camera and tilt up and down, you can see how that affects it. Right, so that is always pointing at the camera, which means I can always read it, which is great. But I don't like this tilting action. Right, so I want to turn that off. And the way that you do that, I'm going to undo my apply constraint. So I'm going to look down here at this status bar and undo until that says undo aim constraint. Good. And I want to constrain it so it's just the y-axis. Then click apply. And select my camera. You see it still follows in this direction. But if I move up and down, it does not tilt. So it's just static, and now I can move the camera absolutely wherever I want, even behind it, and it always tells me what it is. Move this over here so you can get a good look at the final settings that I have here. Again, really, I only adjusted my aim vector, so which side of the text do I want to be pointing at the camera, and my constraint axes. Okay, that's it.